Of all the contracts in the world, marriage is one of the messiest. Drafting feelings that can be as fickle and fleeting as love into legislation, enforced by a patriarchal system that regards women as property. It doesn't need to be so, of course. Marriage can be a beautiful declaration of dedication to one another. For poetic or practical reasons, it can be important to two people to have this ceremony and this binding contract. But when it goes wrong, it can turn a relationship into a prison. The middle portion of Hearts of Stone examines both extremes, starting with Olgierd's second wish, tasking Geralt to give his brother Vlodimir the night of his life. Only problem is, Vlodimir is dead. So here we get our fun conceit for this quest. To give Vlodimir his big night out, he'll have to possess Geralt, while Geralt attends the wedding of Shani's friends.
This is very romantic.
Fuck off.
At the wedding we see budding romances, unrequited love, and well, frankly, harassment as Vlodimir tries to woo Shani, while flirting and hassling every other woman he can, with horrendous chat lines and innuendos.
I can now approach the owner of any of these slippers, and she will lift up her skirt and bend over. To don it, of course.
The young couple at the centre seem genuinely enamoured with each other, and though they come from different classes, a fact that's putting a strain on the bride's poorer family, the two and their loved ones are coming together. The son assures his new dad that they'll make it work.
You needn't worry about our finances, sir. My workshop, business is booming.
Good. I'm relieved to hear it. See, coin's tied to Torrent. But don't tell the old battle-axe. She'd be furious if she learned to let it slip.
Never you worry, sir. My lips are sealed as the grave. Us menfolk need to stick together.
Sir. Enough of that. I'm Vassy. But you can call me Dar.
It's a heartwarming moment in a game often exploring the darker side of human nature. Throughout the wedding, there's also a subplot about Shani and Geralt's affection for each other. For various reasons, the two are reluctant to disclose their feelings. Partially, as we learn should the player follow through on the romance instead of staying friends, it's because their lives don't line up. Both are pulled along by the needs of their career, and Shani can't commit to the domesticity even if part of her wishes she could. It's a mutual understanding between the two, that their brief fling can become nothing more than that. Accepting each other's boundaries is more important. The same cannot be said for Vlodimir. In Geralt's body, he is an absolute train wreck at the wedding, aside from a few sweeter moments, like when he petitions the Grimm to support his wife's education. He's selfish in his approach to relationships, not quite regarding women as objects, but the thin veil of chivalry he abides by is little more than a pretense to inflate his ego. Obviously, beneath his boasting and arrogance is painful insecurity, something exploited by Gonta Rodim when he makes a surprise visit to the wedding celebrations.
That you were ever the worst brother? That you envied Olgierd from your earliest days?
Rubbish. I never envied my brother.
Of course you did. He was a shining role model. Olgierd ran faster, shot truer, lifted greater weights. Olgierd learned to read first, although you tried your damnedest to beat him. As you grew up, he had his pick of girls, whereas you made do with the leftovers.
I apologize, Shani. I'm rather sorry you have to hear this.
Stop fooling yourself. Shani isn't here for you. She's here for Geralt. Even after death, you still play the pale imitation. Oh, by the way, Olgierd's a much better dancer.
You lying dog. That's my brother. I loved him.
The question is, were you as dear to him as he seems to have been to you?
Exposed for the fraud he is, Vlodimir crumbles, before eventually falling back on the same shallow masculine ideals he holds dear. He's also an upper-class twat, insulting the peasants at the wedding every chance he can. Olgierd carries himself better, but many of the same insecurities lie under his civility. After we fulfill Olgierd's second wish, we find him torturing the owner of an inn he burned down, who he deems ungrateful. Which is really the question at the heart of this quest. How much of his actions, his contempt and apathy, lay at the feet of his pact with Vlodimir, a pact whose precise wording we don't learn, leaving it wide open to interpretation whether Olgierd is the victim of his own foolish request, or if that request simply allowed his true nature to emerge. This question comes to the forefront as Geralt is tasked with carrying out his third wish.
I had a wife once. The day I saw her last, I gave her a rose, a violet one. Bring me that bloom. Wouldn't mind reminding myself what it looks like.
When was that? How long's it been? Flowers wilted and turned to dust by now.
You wished to hear a wish. Now you have. Fulfill it.
Tasked with recovering the lost rose, Geralt returns to the Von Everett mansion, which is definitely a bit messed up.
Not so loud, I said. Fog's not natural.
Inside this estate is the sad story of Iris von Everett. At first, Geralt explores the haunted grounds of the manor, encountering the creatures Olgierd employed to care for his wife, like this lovable groundskeeper. What says dear beloved quite like a faceless flesh golem. Then we encounter the spirit of Iris before eventually finding her body, with her guardians, two entities posing as a dog and cat, claiming that she died from her heart bursting. So Geralt decides to contact the spirit by giving Iris a proper burial and maybe rekindling her old self. Burying her at her favourite painting spot seems to get the ball rolling, and then, in classic RPG tradition, Geralt steps into a painted world. The place is a collection of Iris's memories, showing the decline of her marriage, but what's clear is it was never entirely healthy to begin with. At the earliest points, Olgierd is pleasant and polite, but clearly distracted and disinterested. His affection for his wife is fleeting at best. He's also scarless, making it clear that his many wounds were not sustained in battles with his company, but perhaps are part of her blood rituals, intent on finding a way out of his pact with Odin. Though his commitment to escaping Isdil never really seems for Iris' sake. He neglects her throughout their marriage, and that neglect eventually turns to cruelty as he murders her father and makes her dependent solely on him, turning her home into a prison with his twisted caretakers. How much of his behaviour is the fault of a wish gone wrong is left deliberately vague. Did he wish to be invulnerable? A wording that extended to emotional pain, turning his heart to stone? Clearly not. Even before his relationship, his cruelty is clear. The curse he put on the Ophiri Prince was no unfortunate accident, but an act of petty revenge. Between that and his insecurity about wealth and standing, lashing out at his in-laws when they pay off his debts, Olgierd is much like his brother, more sophisticated in his civility and pretense, but cruel and selfish beneath the exterior. Far from emotionless then. Iris turns a blind eye to his neglect and selfishness until it turns into violence and control. But by then, she's too exhausted by this long emotional torture to see a way out of it. While her guardians cite a burst heart, it's clear depression and grief drove her to her death. After reliving these memories, Geralt gets to meet a lucid Iris, aware of her predicament, trapped in her own memories, afraid of what awaits if she leaves.
I remember so little, yet when I think of my rose, I begin to recall what was. The world around me turns real, and my eyes open wide and I recognize things. Remember who I am and who I was.
A friend once told me about a case like this. Could be strong emotions that bind you to the rose, feelings we witchers call pins. They're what keeps you in this world.
Like an insect pinned in a collection case. Horrible.
Need to be honest, if I take the rose, you might cease to exist, as might the world you built around you.
And what will happen then? Shall I be free of the suffering, the sadness? Is it the void that awaits?
I don't know.
This leaves the player with a choice. Encourage Iris to stay in this endless nightmare, or leave and potentially cease to exist at all. It's a hard choice for the player, but it's a heartbreaking end for someone who only had the misfortune of falling for the wrong person. Though the quest is about Iris's literal existence, it's really about how a relationship can become our whole world, and the fear of stepping outside of it. The feeling that perhaps it's better to be in a bad relationship than to be alone. The tragedy is, Olgierd, even with his moment of nostalgia and remorse, moved on long ago. But ending a toxic, controlling relationship isn't just about escape. It means destroying the life you've built. A life built over years and years with that person, even if it's for the better. When facing the great unknown, it can feel safer to stay in the familiar nightmare.